see here. I don't know that there's a way that I can see everybody. Let's see. Yes, I can see everybody. Everybody can see you. I guess I can. Okay. Let's see here. Everybody here can still see me. I guess that works okay. Does that work okay? Louder? Am I on? I'm on now. Am I right? Okay. Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
That's the first time, I think, in my life that anybody has told me to speak louder rather than softer. So I don't know what that says or means. It's not that funny, Keith. It's not that funny. Keith and I have known each other for over 30 years. When you have Well, I'm very glad to be here in person. Yeah, we were in St. Croix, I think, and I had my Hawaiian shirt on there last year. I'm curious, just so I know, because on one hand, I don't want to, say the same things over, and yet, but how many people are new to the principles? Let's say in the last. Within the last 6 months, how many people are new to the principles? Wow, okay. How many people have not heard me speak in person before? Wow, okay. How many people, let's take off but you've heard me speak on it. So how many people, is this the first time you've heard me present? Okay, so over half. Oh, okay, okay. Well, so the rest of you are going to have to put up with the same stories. We'll see what mind, the principle of mind, to me is the same as synagogue. Just gonna, hopefully I can be a conduit here. I am a psychiatrist. I've been a psychiatrist for many years. We had my 50th medical school graduation coming up. I'm trying to get some of my buddies that are still alive to go back to Chicago and we've got 2 years from now for our 50th. And it's like, where did the years go? Where did the years go? And I've been in psychiatry for many years. As some people know, on April Fool's Day in 1983, I'd already been out of medical school 14 years and had been in psychiatry nearly 10 years. And my friend George Pransky invited me. I was living in California at the time, traveling around the country and the world doing programs on personal growth. And he asked me to come to listen to a man named Sidney Banks. And it was fitting that it was April Fool's Day, 1983, because here I was with 26 and a half years of education. And designated by my profession as a mental health professional. True? Is that what they call psychiatrists? They put them in that group of mental health professionals. Which was very interesting because I had had nearly 700 lectures on mental illness and medications. And this is the number of lectures that I had had on mental health. And it's not 3. Zero. Zero. I myself have been going in and out of clinical depression for over 20 years, from the age of 20. I was 41 that day. Never hospitalized. Suicidal thoughts, fought them off a few times. Medication a few times for short periods of time. See, I saw 6 psychiatrists. 6 different psychiatrists. They were fine people, really fine people who cared and who wanted to be of assistance, but not one of them taught me how to live at peace in the present moment. Not one of them. Because they know them some, I suspect, or they would have, I'm sure they would have pointed me that way. I sat listening to Mr. Banks, this man with a 9th grade education, who I think whatever we call God has touched him and allowed to see something very profound. And within 20 minutes, I knew that he knew more about mental well-being than I did with my 26 and a half years of schooling. It was a humbling experience, but it was incredibly hopeful. I felt hope awakened in me for the first time in my entire life that I could live the vast majority of the time at peace, with a light heart, a loving heart, and a joyful heart. I haven't met the person yet, the human being yet, that isn't what they would really like to have. Have you? Anybody here met anybody that really doesn't want just to be at peace and have a light, loving heart, be able to give and receive love? That was the beginning 34 years ago. It's been quite a journey, and it continues to be a journey of learning. To me, every 6 months or so, it seems like, if I'm willing to reflect, that my life seems just a little more gentle, a little more lighthearted, and a little more loving. You know, I'll share something that may seem really silly, but I'm going to share it. It happened yesterday. Whenever I go to the hotels, as we travel, I usually forget to bring something to put my dirty clothes in. So what I have for years done is I've always gone to the closet, and I've taken the thing that was for the laundry. Take that off. They can get another one. And I put my clothes in it. And yesterday as I was packing, I said, you know, whoever person has that job of redoing that room, if I didn't do that, that'd be one less thing they'd have to do. So I went and got a 13-pound garbage bag and I put it in my bag. Now that may seem like a little thing to you. To me, it was a big thing. It was me thinking about somebody else that I don't even know. That maybe that day, their day would just be a little bit lighter because they didn't have to go get another bag to hang up under the things. We have all kinds of labels in psychiatry. We label people this or that. Two of the harshest labels that usually speak when people speak with an edge in their voice when I say them are borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality. You can see that when people say those, there's judgment behind them, often. And what I've seen in people and working with people with those labels is that, number one, they're perfectly mentally healthy inside, because as Rabbi Henry indicated, we're all divine energy in disguise. Not just the soul, but even the body is divine energy in disguise. Everything is divine energy in disguise to me. And please know that anything that I say today, I don't expect you or want you to believe what I say. I really mean that. And I mean that in this way, that if you just believe it because Bill Pettit said it, then it's not yours. You're a follower. And for myself, I don't want to be a follower. But if you listen and something I say resonates with you, with the truth, the place of truth that's inside of everybody, then you're not following me, you're not taking on my belief. You've seen something for yourself. You've had an insight from divine wisdom within each person. And it's yours. It didn't come from me. So if I say anything that offends anybody, it's not my choice to offend anybody. But you know, 3 months shy of my 75th birthday, I probably care less about offending anybody than I ever have. Yeah, that doesn't mean that I'm going to purposely try to offend or test you, but it means that I just feel more, it seems more and more appropriate just to tell the truth as I see it. And if it resonates in the truth with other people, then that's great. If it doesn't, that's okay. If there's 20% of what I say today that resonates with you right now, take that. Take that 20%. If it's 30, take 30%. Because what happens so often is, and it's not just with me, it'll be with Keith, it'll be with Dick, and it'll be with Kathy, be with Linda, it'll be with, you'll forgive me. Yeah. That if you just listen, then it may be that you walk out of here and 2 weeks later you're brushing your teeth or you're combing your hair and you go, oh my gosh, yeah, I see it now. I see it now. So there's not one human being that sits in front of me that I don't know that they are perfectly mentally healthy, except for they've hidden it with the tangle of their own misguided thoughts, as Mr. Lynch says. I love the quote at the beginning, at the end of the first, if you have glasses with me, at the end of the first chapter, and let's say that I'll make up a name. What would be a name? Well, we'll say Bill Pettit, so I don't pick up my own name. Right? So I've got this client named Bill Pettit. And it says at the end of the first chapter of Mr. Banks's book, The Missing Link, which is what I use, by the way, whether I'm teaching psychiatrist or teaching. I don't consider you can teach this. You can just share what you see. I consider myself a student and a sharer of 3 principles, not a teacher. You can teach mathematics. You can't teach this. You can point people to something. And then I love Mr. Banks used to say, don't listen to the words, I'm just trying to point to something, but if you keep looking at my finger, you're not going to see what I'm pointing to. Whenever Mr. Banks in this little book, there was a psychiatrist from one of the meccas in the United States, he had a VA hospital, he was an international consultant on resilience and PTSD. We went through this book like in 10 one-hour periods. And because of something that happened, and he asked me questions and I gave him answers, and he said, where did you get those answers from? And I said, from that book that we just went through one page at a time. And he said, let's go through it again. He's a famous psychiatrist. And the next 4 hours that we spent together, we covered 6 pages in this book. That's how powerful it is. Keith, would you say that's true? And whenever he has it in italics, it makes me really listen. So what the sentence here reads is it says, all human psyches are rooted in universal truth, and no psyche is better than any others. Only to the degree of the individual's psychological and spiritual understanding does it appear to vary. And of course, what I do with my person's name is Bill Pettit, my client, I say, well, my book says all human psyches except Bill Pettit's are rooted in universal truth. And the other person goes, what? I said, no, I'm kidding. Of course. It's pretty egotistical to think that you're the exception. When you think about it. Right? That you're the only one that is not rooted. So in the last 43 years, I've practiced psychiatry from a growing and I hope deepening experience that everybody is perfectly mentally healthy. And it's interesting because I didn't bring the quote today, but there's a quote from Dr. Tom Insel, who recently retired as the director of the National Institute of Mental Health, who actually said, now he would see it from a different perspective in the end of what the cure is, but he actually has said in 2012, we have used these constructs, we have used these terms like depression and schizophrenia so much that people think they're reality. And they're not reality. There's no such thing. They're just constructs. They're just constructs, and we may have to stop using them because it's confusing things. Wow. Director of the National Institute of Mental Health. He said, whatever we've been doing for 5 decades, it ain't working. With a lot of people working very, very hard. The statistics on mortality, on morbidity, on suicides, it's really pretty bleak. Wow. But if the field, as it will someday, and it's growing because there are some people in here, and there are a lot of people in here that know that we start seeing that there, within every human being is the same pure intelligence, pure wisdom, and pure mental health. And that even when people get, quote, diagnosed, and to me, there's only one diagnosis, really, and I'm sure most of you have heard me say this, it's chronic mental stress. It's chronically using God's gift of thought in a way that it was not meant to be used. Pure and simple. Do you think there's ever been a person walking down the street in a peaceful, lighthearted, joyful state of mind that ever had a panic attack? Anybody? Do you think there's anybody that's been spending 98% of their day in a lighthearted, joyful feeling has ever gone into a depression? Do you think anybody has ever, in a lighthearted, joyful state, created so much pain in their own personal reality that they've had to go to another world, another reality? We call it psychosis. I don't think so. I sat with a young woman in a European country one time that had had a severe psychotic break, and she was in her 20s, and she happened to be from a religious Jewish family. And she had isolated herself for 5 years, not really seeing anybody except her family, even her former friends. And in her world that she had gone to, I don't know if I'm using the correct term, if one of the rabbis might tell me, that it was a Jewish demon, which, Dubuk, am I correct?
Yeah.
She was taken by, she experienced herself as being consumed or by a Dubuk. And it was interesting because we spent the two hours twice a day, each day. We would alternate between reading The Missing Link and, is it Rabbi Weinberg, maybe? And Rabbi Weinberg's book about, when you know everything, and I don't know the name of the book. What the Angel Told You, yeah. So we would alternate. And I think I came on the 4th day. I saw her 10 days over 2 weeks. And her mother had tears in her eyes. And she said, no, I need to make up a word. It doesn't matter, we'll call her Ruth. It wasn't Ruth. But she said, Ruth told me this morning that she thinks the D-Book has decided to leave. She's living alone now in an apartment in a large city here in the United States, working full time. And I could tell stories like that all day long. And it's not, but it's important when you hear the stories. It's not about Bill Pettit. It's about It's about that this is inside of everybody and cannot be damaged. I had a young therapist here in your community come up to me beforehand that said, I used to listen to your stories and I was amazed, but last week I had one of those stories. I don't know what I said. I said to him something about, could each of these horrible feelings, could they just be coming from what you're doing with your thinking? And he said the person just started laughing and laughing and laughing. He got giddy. And he said, I'm going to be laughing for the next 70 years of my life. And it was over. Years and years, it was over. The important thing is if you're still experiencing at some point, even as I speak, some mental distress, it's so easy that we get into comparing ourselves with other people and say, I've been listening to this for 8 months or a year, or I should know this, or just as Mr. Banks said so many times, the answer is always gratitude. It's always gratitude for what you've seen. That's going to carry you forward. Rather than judging yourself, what you haven't seen. You should have done it quicker, or more, deeper, or whatever we make up in our head. The idea that mental stress, that these 3 principles, and I'll just speak to the 3 principles as I see them briefly. You're going to get a large dose from a lot of people. And again, it's just the way I see them. I'm going to talk about them different from other people, and it's just the best as I can do using in the world of form to describe what I've seen. I used to love listening to Sid's old audio tapes where he talked about, he said before creation, there was this formless energy. And it's funny because the physicists are even, if we have any in here that want to shoot me or want to jump up and tell me heretic or whatever you can. The physicists for years, for a long time, there may be still some of them, they'd say, well, before creation, in terms of those that, however you see creation occurring, they would say, well, there was a little bit of matter. It was all condensed. And so you could put you could put it on the top of the smallest heel. And out of that matter, it was so condensed that all of material form has come from that. And I don't know about you. I know I can't use the full BS word, but my BS meter goes, there wasn't any form. There was this formless energy, intelligent energy, which has many, many names. Scientists call it one thing. Most people of faith, whatever faith they have, say that they use the word God. And the problem with that word is that we think we know what we're talking about. And when creation occurred, you have all this, so you have the great nothingness, they used to say, and then you've got this isness. And this is all isness. It's all isness. And it looks like we're just kind of, this looks solid until the physicists tell us that it's made up of atoms. And inside the atoms, each atom, there's electrons going about 3/4 the speed of light on every atom. And you go, ooh, maybe Einstein was right. Maybe everything in the universe is energy. And it's all the same energy. So you've got the great nothingness and the great isness, and then you've got the allness. And if you don't deal with both the formless and the form, Sid would say you're talking about cosmic flying. I think the great religious leaders and spiritual leaders say the same thing. That if you don't realize that there's a formless energy, that we're all really divine energy. And that everything is that energy in a different disguise. It's interesting, 2 years ago, I don't know who won the Nobel Prize this last year in physics, but 2 years ago in physics, the two people that from different labs in different places of the universe, they won the Nobel Prize showing that the act of creation is actually accelerating. It's not slowing down. It's actually going into whatever we call the nothingness. It's accelerating faster and faster. I think that's kind of cool. Real cool. If I know that inside, then to me, mind is mind, thought, and consciousness. It's a metaphor. The powers of mind, thought, and consciousness are all spiritual. I know some people, they don't feel comfortable with that word, but it just, all it means is formless. It's formless. That you can't put mind in a box. You couldn't put power of thought in a box. You couldn't put consciousness in a box. It's formless. And the principle of mind is in a way, it's an attempt to just try to describe metaphorically something that you can't wrap your intellect around, that there's an intelligent energy of all things manifesting every moment in the world, in life. And that we call it's the universal mind, or God. And universal thought is the power of thought. The fact that we as human beings, and animals, if you see, animals have the ability to think. Anybody think that isn't true? I mean, anybody have a dog or a cat? They think. Our cat is not happy when it sees our bags getting packed. It'll come and sit on top of them. You know, like if I was bigger, I wish I was one of my ancestors, one of those big saber-toothed tigers. Your ass, pardon me, your bottom would not be leaving this house. I'm sorry, Phil. We have three. Gosh, my mind is going. The little birds that hover like hummingbirds. Yeah. And they hum. But the hummingbirds. We have three hummingbirds, and actually the same ones. There's a smaller one and two larger ones that have come back for every year that we've been there. That Linda's put up the feed. And from what I read, they go down to like Mexico or Venezuela or somewhere way down there in Central America for the winter, and then they come back to our house. Oh, did they know to do that? How do the whales from the Northwest know how to go down to Hawaii, have their babies, come back to the same place, and they all come back every year with a different song, but they all have the same song every year? There is God's presence is in this universe everywhere. If we open our eyes. So the power of thought, 8 billion people now, and by 2045 it's going to reach 9 billion, I think. We're all using, every human being is using the divine gift and power of thought. But have you ever met two people that use it exactly the same way? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, every husband and wife do though, right? Not. Every parent and child does, right? Not. Nobody does. But we're all using the same power, the same formless power. And consciousness is that gift of awareness, that gift that, first of all, everything that we think goes on the screen of our mind, since we're making like a movie, it looks like it's real. Does anybody hear that your thoughts don't look real? Like you're onto something? And if you could just get these other people that don't understand to see the way it really is. We all do. We live in our own personal realities, moment to moment. And has anybody besides me noticed that depending on the feeling state that you're in, that the way you see the world and your mate and your colleagues looks different? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you wake up in a low mood and you wake up in the morning and you look at your mate and go, oh, was this really a good idea? And you go to work and you've been working there 12 years and you go, I liked these people before. I can't believe. I mean, these people out there, I can see every one of them is, wow. And your day goes and you come back home without understanding. You get a good night's rest and you wake up in a beautiful feeling and you look at your mate and your eyes water and you say, how did this happen? How did I come to be with such a beautiful human being? And you go to work and you say, wow, yeah, they've all got there. They're all human beings trying to find their own way, but what a group of beautiful people. How did I get to work at a place like this? And you start to see that we're using this beautiful gift in different ways, and we're getting feedback every moment of our life. We're getting feedback of how we're using the gift of thought, mind, thought, and consciousness. But let's focus on thought. And the way we get feedback is via the feeling level that we're in. Our feeling level gives us feedback every moment of our lives of what we're doing with the power of thought. Because it goes through our limbic system, through our senses, back through our cognition, and we experience it as a feeling. We're constantly experiencing the backflow from our thinking. Every moment. So you can always tell what you've been doing with your thinking by the way you've done. And people say, how do I know when to pay attention to my thinking? It's really simple. If you're feeling lighthearted and loving and joyful, then I'd keep paying attention to it. If you're feeling more lost, more anxious, more down, more judgmental, you're taking your judgmental thoughts. Listen, nobody is going to stop having judgmental thoughts on themselves or others. Because our brain is physical. Yes, it is God's energy in disguise, but it's a computer. It's been given us to use as we go through life. And everybody's computer is not the same. Some have different chips even. People with autism have just a different chip. They've got a different system. But it's not better or worse. In fact, some people think evolutionarily it may be way advanced to deal with where we're going. But it's a different chip. Everybody's got a different computer system. But it's a computer. It's a computer. But our mind is spiritual. Our mind is formless. Our mind is supposed to be in charge of our brain. God has given us a free will that we can pay attention to or not pay attention to the output of our computer. I did not know that until I was 41 years old and I met Mr. Sidney Banks. And I had 26 and a half years of schooling. I didn't know that. If I had a negative judgmental thought, I thought I was onto something. I love the line in chapter on love and forgiveness where he says that judging your own faults or the faults of others leads to unhappiness. It's hard to argue with that, isn't it? It's hard to argue with that. A couple of the metaphors, since there are some people that are new here, a couple of the metaphors that I found, some people find helpful. They're kind of, my metaphors are not world-class intellectual metaphors, but sometimes people feel like they're helpful. So The one of the having a choice of which thoughts we pay attention to. One is that I tell people that unwanted thoughts are a lot like unwanted relatives that come to visit. If you don't feed them, they will leave. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. If you don't feed them, they will say, I think we'll be moving on. Well, it's the same with those unwanted thoughts. If you don't feed them, they will leave. Because it is natural for thoughts to be replaced by healthier thoughts. Because our default setting, folks, is mental well-being. God made us that way. My son has 2 sets of twins, 3.5 years old and 1.5 years old, girls and boys. And those four little babies, he sends us videotapes. I see people go, oh. But if you saw them, and my son and daughter-in-law are incredible. She works 9 to 1 as a beautician. He works 3 to 9 teaching music. Those kids are with them 98% of the time, one of them. And they're beautiful, and they're so joyful and so loving, and it's so kind to you. I mean, it's just amazing. And you see that if you keep little children's belly half full and their pants half empty, they exude they show, as Elsie Spittle said, or what Sid talks about, you see what our true nature is. That's our true nature. We were laughing this morning at breakfast because they sent one video on my brother, he's a brother to me besides being a son. I mean, I just feel so much affinity for my brothers and for my son Dan. But Dan said, he sent this video, and one of the little boys, when they were about 10 months old, you think, or were they walking? Probably 12, 14 months. One of them had gotten in his little car, and he flipped over. So he wasn't being pinched. It was nothing that was hurting him, but he couldn't get out. He was stuck. And so the other little brother, the other little non-identical twin, that was Bo that was stuck. Myers comes to his papa and says, "Papa," he's pointing to his brother. And my son just points back to him, "Well, go help me." I mean, he doesn't say it, but he points. The little boy goes, "Oh. Okay." And he said, my son said later, "What kind of a father am I that I just would keep videotaping?" So his brother goes back and he's trying to pull his brother out. And then he's trying to pull the little car out. He's trying to get him free. And finally he just can't, sees that he just can't. So you know what he does? He kneels down and he wraps his arms around him. And he just hugs him. And holds it.
So sweet. That's so sweet.
That is what we're made of. And of course my son went over and freed him up. He said, Am I a bad father to a videotape this? I said, there are kind of 4 things that happen. Can everybody see this? Kind of 4 things that happen when we get... Oh, the other metaphor. My late wife and I, she died in 2000, and my present beautiful wife, Linda, and I were widowed both about 3 years when we met. Some of you heard we met on Valentine's Day 14 years ago. And when she came to do a grand rounds at West Virginia University Medical School on the healing power of unconditional love. And I had decided, I saw this flyer as I was going to lunch, and I said, lunch, unconditional love, lunch. Well, I made the right decision for once. Anyway. So, the other metaphor is that my late wife and I were at a sushi bar in San Diego one time. It was a huge room, as I remember it, 80 to 100 chairs. And as you sat you sat there on these high stools, food would come by. Have anybody ever been to those where they're making the food in the center and then the food is coming by on a conveyor belt? And if you see something that you like, you take it off and there's area to... And at one time, after I'd been exposed to the principles, I woke up one morning and I thought, wow, that's not a bad metaphor for my thinking. Because I had no control over what food came by me on those plates. Did I? Did I have any control? No? I didn't experience any control. But did I have control over which food I took off and chewed on? Our brain stores material. We've all had experiences that aren't necessarily that we'd like to relive over and over again. And those, because of the way our mind works and the way our brain works, adaptively, are stored in a special way with a lot of special effects. And they're to help us not to avoid getting in the same circumstances any way it can. So it has a lot of details to it. But if we don't understand that, when those memories get triggered, or thoughts get triggered, or even sad thoughts, if somebody here came up to me to say hello, and they were a spitting image of a friend, male or female, who had died, say, when I was in high school and gotten killed in a car wreck, I might suddenly, as I'm saying hello to them, have tears in my eyes and my stomach churning, and go, whoa, and then have the realization that this person is a spitting image of my friend that died. True? So we don't have control over every thought that comes into our head. But I guarantee you, folks, we have 100% control over which ones we take off and chew on. I did not know that. Now, if one doesn't understand that, one does other things. They go to trying to distract themselves from their negative thoughts. Has anybody besides me ever done that? Or inappropriate thoughts. How about try really hard to get it out of your head? Has anybody besides me ever tried to, I've got to get those thoughts out of my head? No? Yeah, or the third one, I've got to think positive thoughts. I'm going to try to think positive thoughts. My therapist or somebody said, think positive thoughts. Do any of those work? No. But if you don't take them too seriously, down the river. That's why we can't remember stuff. Sometimes I've been known to say can't remember, begins with an S also, but it's not stuff. But that's why we can't remember stuff. Because our mind is always like a kaleidoscope. It's always trying to move. But our default setting is mental well-being. But if we start paying attention, lacking the understanding, and I used to spend probably 6 to 9 hours a day in worry. I'm sure there's no worry here, but in other parts of the country I've seen people that actually worry about the future. Really? They do. They get into the what if this happens, it's sad. I mean, I'm glad to be in a place that they don't do that. Some people actually get into guilt.
Oh, yeah.
They don't, again, I'm sure this community. But there are people that do that. They beat themselves up for their past mistakes instead of trying to learn from them and go forward, realizing that they're human. And that there's a term that Mr. Banks uses that I use, and again, I'm not asking you to believe it, I'm asking you to at least entertain the possibility. It's called psychological innocence. That every single human being, and I'm not going to have the time today to talk about exceptions, because people always say, yeah, but what about? To me, it's real. Every human being, given their level of psychological and spiritual understanding, every moment is making decisions as they see best to do so.
Every human being is what?
Is making the decisions each moment, given their feeling level and the level of understanding that they're bringing to that moment. They're making the best decision they can make at that moment. How many of us later in life go, oh, what the heck was I thinking, right? We've all done that. Huh? Resentment. – Hurt people are the only people that hurt people. Nobody in a peaceful, lighthearted, joyful state of mind that I know has ever been hurtful to another human being by word or deed. If you find a loving person in a totally loving, lighthearted, joyful state of mind hurting somebody, you might write it down and maybe we can win a Nobel Prize. It'll be the first time that recorded. So I love it when Mr. Banks at the end of this, and it's not a should, but what Mr. Banks ends his little book with in italics is, "Bless those who have sinned against you, for they have lost their way. Reach out your hand and help them to live a happy day." Upset. Being upset when things aren't the way you want them to be. It took me a long time to realize that the purpose of the world was not to make Bill Pettit happy. I was at least in my late 30s before I realized it. Overanalysis. I'm sure nobody here overanalyzes. Nothing wrong with analysis. To me, about 3 to 4% of life lends itself to analysis. And about 96% of life lends itself to being present and accessing wisdom. Because analysis works when you've got a formula and you know the variables. It doesn't work much after that. If you're not going to get the answer if you don't get the answer or are closer to the answer after about 2 minutes of analysis, it ain't going to be better 20 years later. I love it when that one fellow that, not Peter Sellers, no, the movie, he made movies, but he made the movie Sleeper, and he was in the movie Sleeper. Woody Allen. And he woke up after 20 years and he said, "Darn! 20 years," he said, "I'd be halfway through my analysis." My analysis. It was their unresolved grief. Not accepting life on life's terms. There's not a person in this world that hasn't had losses of some kind or another. And we either accept life on life terms or we drag it along with this, all of these things, like a weight, a burden, and then wonder why we've lost the feeling. And what happens? What I do oftentimes, I put it to me and I say, because I've got a person that has just ranked herself he or she 0 to 5 on these, with most of them being 5s. And then I say, "How many hours a day do you sleep?" And they say, "Well, 5." And I say, "Of the 19 hours you're awake, how many are you at quiet peace?" And they say, "Pardon me, what'd you say?" I said, "How many of those 19 hours are you at a quiet peace?" They go, "I don't know what the heck you're talking about." Or they may say, maybe 2 or 3. So 15 hours a day, if they're activating with negative thinking, we activate what they call the hypothalamic pituitary axis, the stress response, that is made to be activated once every 24 to 72 hours for up to 30 minutes. After that, it starts doing damage. It's meant to save your son in an accident. It's meant to, relative of Linda's, actually, the jack gave way about 6 months ago and came crashing down on him. His 5'2", 130-pound son picked up the car because of that stress response available. Somebody pulled him out, minor injuries. It's not meant to be, do this, activate that response 12, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. If we do, if I worried 6 hours a day after my wife died and I was left with 2 teenage daughters, beautiful young women, if I would have worried 6 hours a day, what would have happened to my mood? Would I have gotten more lighthearted and joyful? No, I would have gotten depressed. Eventually I would have been irritable. And eventually I would have gotten disconnected, felt disconnected from myself, from other people. True? Anybody knows, anybody that's ever been there? I've been there. At the extreme, this is the person that can walk into a theater with an AK-47, kill indiscriminately, because they're in so much pain inside that they're ready to go out and they're not going alone. What's going to happen to my level of anxiety? Am I going to get more calm and peaceful as I worry for 6 hours? I have about 5 minutes. About 5 minutes. What's going to happen to my level of anxiety? Am I going to become more peaceful and serene as I worry? It's going up, isn't it? It's going up. And some of you have heard me tell me you're going to get panic, and eventually you're going to get generalized anxiety, tension, then you're going to get panic attacks. Panic attacks are God's way of setting off an alarm to try to wake us up that we're doing something that's really hurtful to us. If you drive in the county road and you start to roll off the road, you towards the ditch, you hit the rumble strips, do you not? Anybody ever hit a rumble strip? And it does what? It wakes you up. That's what a panic attack, it's meant to last 4 minutes, because norepinephrine that gets released has a half-life of 1 minute, so in 4 minutes, 96% of it is gone out of your system. Unless you feed it, and then it can go on for hours. And eventually you get obsessive-compulsive rituals. People call it OCD. They think that's a problem. It's not a disease. It's an attempt to try to deal with the tension. I've got a lady that had 10 to 12 hours of rituals. She now does less than 15 minutes a day. And we never once talked about the rituals. It's about her finding peace. And if she's found peace, she has less need to do something to try to deal with her rituals. And the anxiety goes up. What about the body? Going to start having pain somewhere. Either old pain or new pain. Headache, stomach. Then you're going to start having sleep problems. Then you're going to start having memory problems. True?
Yes.
And if I would have done this, I would have ended up down here feeling like, I don't know if I probably can't use the word crap, so I won't use it. I'll use something else. Bad. I'll put bad. I have no idea. Then I wonder why I got spanked as a kid. It was not rocket science. My 2 daughters come grieving their dead mother, and I'm in this state of mind. How much good am I to them? How much? I was raised Catholic, so sometimes people will say none. And I said, I don't know what you're bringing the nuns into this. So then what happens? Who did this to me, folks? In this example, I did. Did I do it because I love feeling bad? No, it was innocent. But did I do it? Yes, I did. I misused God's beautiful gift of thought. And mind, thought, and consciousness, these gifts. I've misused it. And I've created innocently incredible dis-ease, kind of a play on the word disease inside of me. So then what do? Some people go to alcohol. Some people go to drugs. I could have you do this, but because of time, I'm going to do it. Food. Some of you have heard the example. The food, and you can have eating disorders, you can have people get anorexic, eat and throw up, you can whatever. I had a lady in my office one day, she weighed 455 pounds. When I got to there, she started sobbing uncontrollably. And I very quietly gave her tissue, and I sat quietly with her. She sobbed and sobbed for at least 7 to 10 minutes. Finally, she took the tissue, she wiped her face, and she started breathing normal. And we'll call her Nancy. I said, Nancy, only if you feel comfortable, but do you feel comfortable telling me what just happened? She said, Doctor, I just had the most beautiful experience in my entire life. Shocked me. Shocked me. You'd be curious? I was curious. I said, what was it? She said, when you did this, that we're all innocently doing the best we can, but like me, spending 10, 12, 15 hours a day in stressful thinking, I suddenly, and you put alcohol, drugs, I suddenly felt unconditional love and total compassion for my alcoholic parents that I had been in judgment of my entire life. It's like I had 200 pounds off my back. It changed, that moment changed her life. She said, because I saw that like me, we were 3 beautiful human beings. who had been innocently creating incredible dis-ease by an innocent misuse of God's gift of thought. They used alcohol to try to get some relief. I used food. You could make the list on and on. Gambling, pornography, hoarding, OCD, smoking, cigarettes, even though they know it kills people. You could go on and on and on. Isolation, anger outbursts. These are attempts to try to relieve the dis-ease. We got a whole list of diseases. They're the solutions people are trying to come up with without understanding to learn how to live in a better place. Does this make sense? Does it resonate to people? Understanding these three spiritual principles, I don't care what the diagnosis is. And when we get to other breakouts, I'll be glad if people want to ask about schizophrenia and bipolar and anything you want to. But I'm telling you right here and now, I've had people sit in front of me that had been declared totally mentally disabled from Harvard and Mass General, and families told that they'd be in and out of hospitals the rest of their lives, mostly in, that are living beautiful, beautiful lives. And this one lady told me, she said, the day you sat in front of me and said, you are perfectly mentally healthy, you just don't know it. There was a place inside of me. First thought was, what the hell, is this psychiatrist crazy? The second thought was, I know that's true. And that second thought came from a different place from the first thought, which came from the brain. The second thing came from God's wisdom that's within all of us. Thanks for your attention.